Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Hopefully this works now. Okay. We're on the air. It is the John Thomas Hill Show for June 30th, June 30th, 2020. It's been about 20 years since we had the 19th. All right. I'm sure you've heard by now about the story that's come out in the New York Times about the fact that Russian intelligence agents have been paying Taliban troops to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan. Allegedly, the Trump administration was told of this, and the president himself was told of this sometime in early March before, maybe even late February, before the whole pandemic came about. We're not sure how many troops have been killed. We're not sure how extensive this program was. But from all indications is that this actually did take place. And that obviously leads to the question that came out of Watergate, and is relevant now. What did the president know, and when did he know it? Did the president know anything about this, and if so, when? And if so, what did he do about it, if anything? Now, the party line so far from the White House is that the president was not informed of this. Because apparently, according to the sources, according to what he was been told, is that, or at least what Trump has said, is that the information was not good, and he said that the story wasn't true. All indications are that it is, because there are Republicans on Capitol Hill who are starting to act like this is very serious, and this is actually quite troubling. Here's the deal. If this is recently coming out, and if this were just something that literally came out of nowhere, we would have been hearing this a lot longer. You know, we've already been hearing this from the president, but since it's involving Putin, why is it all of a sudden just now getting out? Did somebody leak this? What most likely? Had this been any other administration, had this been happening, all hell would be breaking loose right now. Bush, Obama, Clinton, Bush before him, Reagan, obviously, certainly Reagan, would have been raising hell about this. We're not seeing any of that. We're seeing denials. We're seeing trepidation. And most likely we are going to hear in the near future that, yes, it did happen, but it's not as bad as we fear, and that the program, Russia has stopped the program. It was some sort of rogue element in the Russian intelligence agencies. Look, let me be perfectly frank here. Vladimir Putin is former KGB. Their current intelligence agency is pretty much run the same way as the KGB used to be. They're very good at what they do. And they're trying to get Americans to leave Afghanistan so that they can exert influence over Afghanistan. They're not going to invade because Putin's not that stupid. He wants influence over Afghanistan. And he wants to get influence over Iran, which he's starting to get. This gives him two key states in an alliance that could cause problems with the United States. Add to that, Pakistan is on the fence right now. Ever since 9/11, Pakistan has not exactly been the solid rock solid ally we need in the war on terror. They have fluctuated at times. When we took down Osama bin Laden in 2011, there were people within their government that were not happy about that because it meant that he was living practically in plain sight in Islamabad. And this was known, obviously, to the government, had to have been known. And if that is the case, then there's a lot of questions that need to be asked about this. Like, why did it take nearly a decade to find him when apparently everything we've been told was that Osama bin Laden was there pretty much the whole time after 9/11. But getting back to the point of, did Trump know about this? Now, there is a theory that Putin has something on Trump so bad that Trump will basically kowtow to whatever Vladimir Putin wants. Vladimir Putin is not stupid. He is not going to try and make it blatantly obvious that Trump is in his pocket, so to speak. But there is enough out there to make you wonder. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, that you're just complaining because, Russia allegedly interfered with the election of 2016. The evidence isn't there. Here's the problem with that argument. Vladimir Putin didn't want to affect the outcome of the election. He wanted you to think he did. It's because of one simple thing, and I've mentioned it before, and I'm going to mention it right now. Playing both sides against the middle. The truth is that he wants to create chaos. He wants American people to disbelieve in their electoral system. He wants them to disbelieve in their government. He wants to disbelieve in everything. He is loving the fact that we have all this chaos right now. There were reports that right-wing agents were being paid by Russia. Now, this is a conspiracy thing that it kind of makes me wonder because it wouldn't be this obvious. But there have been reports that Russia may have paid right-wing activists to infiltrate the Black Lives Matter protests over the George Floyd killing to create looting and rioting. And that very well did happen. It's also a likely scenario that they paid left-wingers, very ardent left-wingers who didn't even realize they were being paid by Russia. Plausible deniability, anybody? Russia wants to take America down. If you don't see that, if you don't understand that, then you're being foolish. Russia's enjoying the fact that we're messing up this entire coronavirus thing. They're enjoying it tremendously. Why? Because it's reducing our reputation in the world. There's a game going on, ladies and gentlemen. You may know about it. You probably don't know all the particulars. Some of you may not. Russia and China are trying to play against us. They're wanting to chip away at us, at our dominance in the world. They want to do this because if they are successful, then Russia and China become the superpower. The United States becomes second world, maybe even third world. They want to hack us to our knees. Maybe even literally hack us to our knees in the sense of hacking into our computer systems. Russia loves the idea, Putin loves the idea, that some Americans think that he has got Trump bought and sold. He also loves the idea that there is a very fierce opposition to that story and the fact that Donald Trump has his movement. Now, if you have a leader that's compromised, like Trump may very well be, and I hate to say it, but it probably is true. The reality is very troubling indeed, because it means that you have to question every decision being made by Donald Trump. What is he doing? Why is he doing it? What do we not know? It's something that bothers the hell out of me, frankly. And it's the unknown that bothers me greatly. What will Russia do in this election? Will they stand by their man allegedly and back Trump again? Or will they sell him out and leave him high and dry and let Joe Biden take over? But the doubt is there, and maybe even leave a little bit for people to think maybe Russia helped Joe Biden. Remember, this is a game of divide and conquer. It's creating doubt in the minds of the American people. It's creating divisions. That's the thing you've got to remember here. This is a very sophisticated operation by people who have been doing this for generations, handing down their knowledge from the late 40s when the Cold War essentially began, all through the 50s, all through the 60s, and the stereotypical James Bond era through the 70s and the 80s, all the way to the end of the Soviet Union. And this is where it gets interesting. I mentioned this before, but at the end, when the Soviet Union fell in 1991, at the end of that year, there were very powerful forces in the Russian intelligence agencies that were not happy about this. They weren't happy with Boris Yeltsin. They considered him ineffective, and some even wonder if he was an outright tool of the United States. And for most of the night, and for pretty much the entire 90s, Russia was sort of, hey, we used to hate these guys, but now we like them, and they're sort of cool, and things are looking great. Well, Yeltsin couldn't stand around, couldn't stay popular. Economic problems were the end of his reign, and he eventually made way for Vladimir Putin. Vladimir Putin is former KGB, as I've mentioned before, and I'll probably mention again. There are a lot of people like him that want to see Russia return to the power that it once did. They're not necessarily wanting to bring back the Communist Party, because there's money to be made. Here is the thing that Republicans and conservatives will not tell you about. Russia was never truly communist, in the sense of Marxism and whatever else, Hegelianism and all this. It was a dictatorship with the veneer of communism. Okay? Like Hitler's and Mussolini's fascist regimes were capitalist in a veneer of capitalism, but they were essentially dictatorships. Right now, China calls itself a communist party, but in reality, you look at their economy, there's a lot of capitalism going on. Same thing's going on in Russia. There is still technically a communist party, but it's minimal. It has the stench of losing. Vladimir Putin doesn't like losers. So, there we are. Here we have a very significant problem, in that Vladimir Putin wants to create discord among the United States and the people of this country. And he's willing to do anything to do it. Is he scared of Joe Biden? Probably. because Joe Biden gets into power, that means our allies can have faith in us again. And Vladimir Putin realizes he's got to deal with a president who's competent. But Vladimir Putin plays a game of chess in his mind. He's thinking moves ahead of everybody else. He's probably expecting Biden to win. He probably may even want Biden to win, because Donald Trump in his mind is probably past his usefulness. He is like that resource that a spy uses that is no longer useful, and they have to turn them loose, either the hard way, which does not bode well for Donald Trump long term if Putin goes that way, or more likely completely discrediting Donald Trump and basically ransacking him to the point where Russia is an afterthought. Look at all the stuff, corruption that's going on in the Trump administration. They have fed into his greed. He was put there by the people, allegedly. I'm still not entirely 100% sure Russia didn't interfere with the election, but I have my feeling is they wanted to make us think it was, instead of actually doing it, because they didn't want to get caught with their hand in the cookie jar and facing a Hillary Clinton with more than enough motivation to go after them. They got lucky. Their man won. Think about this. Look at Lindsey Graham. 5 years ago, he was anti-Trump all the way. Now he's Trump's biggest sycophant. The man sucks up to Trump more than I can't even imagine. Used to not be that way. 5 years ago, Lindsey Graham was pretty much called Donald Trump a racist. This isn't about, this isn't the old days where, McCain didn't like George W. Bush. George W. Bush didn't like John McCain. But Bush won the primary, won the nomination, and McCain accepted it, moved on. If you look at things, there are a lot of things W. and McCain believed in. They were not that different. Some things they were, most things they were not. I don't think you had McCain calling George W. Bush a racist. I don't think you had it get to that point. You look back at the 2016 primary season, you had Jeb Bush basically warning us about this. You had here's the thing that bugs me about this whole thing. Donald Trump got so much free publicity on the networks. The networks he bashes: CNN, NBC, ABC, CBS. Donald Trump is not an idiot. So it makes me wonder, what's his game? Why does he attack the media that basically gave him the White House? If you read about where his election campaign went in 2016, there were enough blunders to where it should not even been close. It all comes down to misinformation. This was not about putting Donald Trump in the White House. It was preventing Hillary Clinton from being president, because Vladimir Putin cannot stand Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton is almost as ruthless as Vladimir Putin. Hillary Clinton, in my mind, is one of the most bloodthirsty, cold-blooded politicians we've ever had. And that's a compliment. That was also a detraction from her. It was blatantly obvious that Bill Clinton was the charismatic leader. In many ways, Hillary Clinton was the cold-blooded one of the bunch. Was it a mistake in retrospect for Hillary Clinton to basically have the nomination wrapped up, say, for Bernie Sanders' challenge, which lasted longer than most people expected? Yeah, I mean, had Elizabeth Warren run in 2016, I think she would have won easily. Tammy Duckworth, absolutely she would have won. There are a lot of other Democratic candidates who wanted to get in, but the Democratic committee, the Democratic establishment, wanted Hillary to be the one to be the first female president of the United States. And we all thought she was going to be. But it remains to be seen what all this comes. When Donald Trump leaves office, and he will eventually leave office because he can't live forever, it's going to be interesting to see what happens to his files. I can almost guarantee you he's going to try and seal them for as long as possible. But a challenge is coming. I think he realizes that the Democrats are going to win big this year. The voters that actually pushed Trump over the limit last time aren't going to do it this time. They don't hate Joe Biden like they hated Hillary Clinton. They may not entirely be fond of Joe Biden, but he's likable. They may not like everything he believes in, but their sense is he's not going to create the drama that Donald Trump does. There's always constantly something in the news about Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. What's he done now? What crap did he tweet today? What did he say in the media that has everybody going nuts over? I call it Trump fatigue. I firmly believe that is going to cost him the election because people are tired of all the drama. They want to get back to where the president, yes, you're going to hear a lot about the president because he is the president, but you're not going to hear all the scandals. That is part of the reason I think that Al Gore lost in 2000 because Bill Clinton was there. There was obviously a rift between Bill Clinton and Al Gore. The truth of the matter was Al Gore never set himself apart. And I think a lot of it was because Hillary didn't want to set Al Gore apart from Bill Clinton. Remember, she was running for the Senate that year. She won, he lost. And truth be told, I don't think there were shenanigans. I don't think the shenanigans cost Gore the election. There's always shenanigans every election. The Florida wasn't so much shenanigans as the ballots were pretty bad, and there was a lot of confusion and all this. The truth of the matter was, in that election, Al Gore lost his home state, which he should have won. He was leading in it for most of the campaign, and he ignored it. And then before he could right the course, George W. Bush took the lead in the polls close to the end of the campaign and won the state. Had Al Gore turned Tennessee, he wins the election. History's changed. I don't think he would have done anything different than George W. Bush in the initial stages after 9/11. I think we probably wouldn't have gone to war with Iraq unless Saddam Hussein did something that caused us to get involved there. But I think we would have definitely been involved in Afghanistan, but not to the extent that we have become, and we sure would not be there now. But here's the thing. It's going to be interesting to see what happens this year. How much pressure is put to restrict voting rights. You know, with the pandemic on, it's a perfect opportunity to prevent people from voting. Republicans know that the demographics are against them. But instead of changing their message, they've decided, and they've been doing this for a while now, they've decided to gerrymander the hell out of districts, to campaign on this voter ID stuff, which is basically a facade. If it were just about the IDs, I might go with it. But if you look at the stuff underneath it, that they try to sneak in, cutting back on early voting, excuse me, cutting back on early voting, making it harder for working people to vote because not everybody can get off on election day, shortening the hours, having fewer precincts. We've seen this already, fewer precincts. In Kentucky, they went from 3,000 precincts to 600. That's a lot. I mean, there was one precinct that was basically for 600,000 people or something like that. That's insane. It's a game. And they've skewed the rules toward them. That means the Democrats are going to have to play very, very good political football in order to win. Now they've got a chance at winning this. But they've got to not take anything for granted. Because the other side is more than willing to cheat. Which is sad. Because they don't need to. They'd have to change their message. They'd have to try and become the party of the Big Ten again, like Reagan used to tout back in the day. Although whether or not that was true remains to be seen. But today, well, if you look at the Republican Party today, it's a hard right party. The Democrats are not the party of the left, they're the party of the center right, if anything else. In classic political terms, in the sense of looking at geopolitical politics. And in another podcast, I'm going to talk about, I may do this tomorrow night, about how conservative media has changed the landscape of politics in America for the worst. And how it all started, and how they're not being fair and balanced with you. And they never have been. There was never their intention to be. So, when I conclude this up, I'm going to tell you this. Keep an eye on this story. See how far it goes. Will it be lost in the tsunami of news about COVID-19, the coronavirus and all that? The big story today is now Senate Republicans are trying to convince the president to wear a mask. Interestingly enough, I've been doing some thinking about this. Why is it that wearing a mask has become a political issue? Look at all the misinformation on Facebook and Twitter about this very subject. It's crazy, isn't it? The medical community says it's perfectly fine. You're not going to lose any oxygen, restrict oxygen. You're not going to suffocate because of too much CO2. But yet that's out there. The information's out there, and people are gullible enough to buy it because they've been trained. Let me give you my theory about this. And this is, I'm not much for conspiracy theories, but I think there's something to this. Remember when I said that there's a Putin was upset about the fact the way the Soviet Union fell in 1991. I think that they have been working on getting back at us for that long. Not just Putin, but plenty of others. Because to them, their homeland was embarrassed by the United States. They lost the Cold War. And they felt like we were taking a victory lap. So they bided their time. They let Boris Yeltsin basically stumble his way out of power. Boris Yeltsin was very charismatic, was not the best politician in the world. He just was lucky enough to where the coup that happened in August of 91, which almost toppled Gorbachev, but didn't. Yeltsin came in to save the day, which basically meant Yeltsin was now in charge and Gorbachev was overthrown eventually for Yeltsin. The coup worked, it just wasn't the guy that actually ran the coup that won the day. It was the guy that stood up to the coup that actually won the day. So all of this, in my mind, was in Putin's mind back then. He was thinking the whole time, how can I get revenge for Russia against our mortal enemies? He considers us mortal enemies. We're the bad guys in his book. We're the competitors. We have to lose. I think that for the last 30 years, Putin has been, and people aligned with him, have been trying to find a way to undermine the United States by basically pitting one side, the right, against the other side, the left. It's very much underneath, very much where indirect contributions, people, it's one of those things. I wish I were younger and kind of understood this because I could, and I had the resources to investigate this, even though it'd probably kill me. The truth of the matter is, we are facing a very dangerous situation because we have an enemy in Russia that has been working for 30 years to undermine us. And if you don't see that, you're kidding yourself. I wish I were joking about this. I'm not. I can't joke about this. And I'm not much for conspiracy theories. But you put two and two together. If you're a KGB agent and you're very proud of your homeland, you hate to see your homeland basically fall apart, and now it's much smaller, much less powerful, being exploited by the West in your mind. Vladimir Putin basically used pure, typical Russian Politburo power plays to get to power, to be seen as the savior of Mother Russia against the corruption of the Yeltsin years. He played against George W. Bush brilliantly, kind of went under the radar, and in Putin's mind, he wanted the Russian people to think the United States was taking him for granted. Because all that while, he was getting ready. You remember at the end of the Bush administration, near the end, the Russians invaded the nation of Georgia to try and supposedly free land that was occupied by native Russians, or Russian people that were living in Georgia. And that's Russian Georgia, or the Georgia near Russia, not our Georgia. So sometimes people get confused by this. Look at what they've been doing in Ukraine. All calculated It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few months. If Biden wins, that means the game gets harder for Putin, but maybe Putin wants it that way. The Baltic states are being eyed by Putin. He would love to take them over. He would love to make them part of Russia again, to give them more of a port in the North Sea, to the North Sea. Russia, for being a huge, gigantic country, doesn't really have that many ports. They got St. Petersburg, they got Vladivostok, and that's pretty much it. The United States has massive amounts of coastline for ports that are usable. China, same deal. India, plenty of ports. Brazil, plenty of ports. Canada even has plenty of ports. Mexico does. You got third world nations that have more ports than Russia does. And they know it. Vladimir Putin wants to bring back the Soviet Union, just not in a communist manner. He wants it to be basically Russia. And now reports are Belarus and Russia are having issues. The Belarusian leader isn't too fond of Putin because I think he's worried that maybe Putin has his eyes on maybe putting a puppet regime in there, like back in the old days when in the Eastern Bloc. So this is why I think it's important for Trump to lose, because if he doesn't lose, we're going to be even more diminished than we already are. Russia's going to gain strength. China's going to gain strength. And here is the game in a nutshell. It's not about us. It's about Russia and China. On the surface, they're friends. In reality, they're anything but. They are rivals. We are the rival to both of them. The United States has played both against each other before. It's been that way. Mainly because it's good for business. We keep one from being more powerful than the other. We keep our position as superpower leader. But look where we're at now. We have a president who may very well be beholden to Russia and to Vladimir Putin. That means Russia has an upper hand on China. Why is it that Trump loves Russia so much and hates China? Blatantly hates China. Right after he was elected, one of the first things he did was call Taiwan without Chinese permission. The reason? Now you say, well, an American president should have to ask for permission to talk to Taiwan. True, but China ain't exactly a small nation. And there is a precedent for presidents of the United States to basically say, hey, we want to talk to Taiwan. Is that cool with you? China, depending on the subject of the conversation. Now, if you're asking, well, why there's an official communication between the United States and Taiwan all the time. China knows this. They're not stupid. Everybody knows this. But official communications, the stuff that's actually blatantly out there in the public, the perception is that China is mollified. Taiwan's a little annoyed, but they understand the game. They don't want to be invaded by China. They want their independence, but they know that they can't get it. They can't just say it out loud, because if the United States were to recognize Taiwan as an independent country tomorrow, China would invade. And it would be a massive bloodbath. And no matter what the United States did, it would not prevent it. And that would lead pretty much to a war between China and the United States, which Russia would love. Because Russia might tilt the balance. Who does Russia want to win that war? Do they want the Chinese to win and beat the United States, or do they want the United States to win and beat China? It's going to be interesting. Because I think if Biden gets to be elected, it puts back the balance of power, because now Biden isn't so antagonistic toward China. And he isn't so friendly toward Russia. Doesn't mean Biden's kissing the butt of Xi Jinping, the president of China, but he's not out to twist his arm either. We're back to playing diplomatic games again. Not hawking off China, but making sure that China abides by the agreement. Yeah, I don't think you'd see China doing what they're doing in Hong Kong if Hillary Clinton were president. And they won't do it if Biden's president. They'll back off because they don't want a confrontation with the United States. If the United States comes at them in a military conflict, China will defend themselves, and they'll try to make it look like that they're the United States are the aggressors. China loves to play the long game. They want to play the subversive, the passive-aggressive kind of game. You can go through and look at China's investments in other countries and the way they've kind of made countries sort of almost subservient to them with these deals. It's interesting if you read about it, folks. Very interesting if you read about it, because it means that China has been outplaying us in that game. We're the ones that are supposed to have all the influence in the world. Why do you think we have all these military bases in all other countries? It's not to necessarily protect them, it's to basically make sure the United States has a foot in that, has a piece in the game, so to speak. That's why we've got the game there, ladies and gentlemen. It's always been that way. And I don't understand why people don't understand that. That this is a big game between the United States, Russia, and China. There are other players as well, but they're basically bit players. We are the three main characters in the geopolitical game of the entire world. And Russia is trying to be number one. China wants to be number one. Donald Trump is thinking he's number one, but the reality is he's being played by Russia to go up against China, to where we're sapping our resources, and the truth of the matter is Vladimir Putin wants us to not even be in the game anymore. He wants it to be him and China. Because in their minds, they've been around the longest, so they're the ones that should be, not this upstart country that's only not even been here a quarter of a millennium. And that is true. We've only been around since 1776, technically 1781, when we won the War of Independence. Whereas Russia's been around a hell of a lot longer than that. China's been around a hell of a lot longer than that. Most of Europe's been around longer than that. So, yeah. We're the upstarts. We've always been the upstarts. And we probably always will be the upstarts, because we're not have that deep history that European nations and Asian nations have, whereas we are basically the new kids on the block. We've been here for a long time. You think we'd be at the respect right now. We don't. Russia and China know how powerful we are, but they also know that we have our vulnerabilities, and they are playing upon them. They know about our racial tensions. They know about our economic inequalities, and they are playing on us to that. And it's one of those crazy things. I'm not much for conspiracy theories, but here's the thing. It makes a lot of sense. If I were Vladimir Putin and wanted to bring down the United States of America, but didn't want to have to fire a single shot and get my military involved in all this, and use a former KGB agent with all these resources about counterintelligence and subversion and all this, most people think, oh, he's going to go to the left. No. The right. We at least suspect it. When all is said and done, I think somewhere down down the years, the last 10 years of the Tea Party movement, and now the Trumpism, I think there's going to be some evidence down the road that somehow or another the Russian intelligence agency has their fingers in this. Not a tight grasp of it, but just enough to where they've been meddling in things. Stirring things up here and there. Because here's the thing. They want to be able to deny it. It's plausible deniability. It's like I mentioned earlier. Plausible deniability. If you want to break into a bank, but you can convince others to do it, and in a very indirect way, but they got to give you the money. Let's say you've got something on them, but you find a way to where they don't know that you're the one that's got the goods on them. It's somebody else that's playing the game, so that you don't go to jail, but you get the money, or you get most of the money. This is the whole game here, and China's playing the game right along with them. It's just right now China is sort of looked at as the enemy right now. They've never been our friend, but they're looked at far worse. And I think part of it is China wants it that way because they can make more of a power grab that way. Here's the thing, and this is something I'm going to talk about. Why is it that Trump is pushing out this theory that China is launched this virus to attack the United States when we are the largest trading partner of China? Why would you attack a country with a virus if they're buying most of your stuff? And with something that's basically gone all over the world now. All the world is under lockdown, essentially. I don't know all the details, but I think in the fullness of time, maybe it'll happen before my lifetime is over. I think a lot of what I think is really going on is actually going to be proven true. And I think you're going to find out that Donald Trump wasn't the powerful leader he was. It was the fact he was beholden to somebody else who made him that way. I would love to be wrong. I don't think I am. Well, that's it for today. Sometime in the future we'll actually do something you might actually want to listen to. They might actually bring people together instead of tear people apart because, there is this movement that loves Trump. But here's the thing. I'm not going to sit here and just let this go by. I can't. I love this country. I understand the history. I understand everything that's gone on in this country. In the past and in the present. And I see where we're going in our future, and I don't like it. We've got to be careful, folks. We've got to be very careful. Until next time, good night, good luck, and may the good news be yours.